Let's just do it. All right. I'm here with Logan Thomas. Logan, thank you so much for joining me today here. How are you doing?
Good. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thanks for jumping on the call here. Excited to chat a little bit more about music, things going on in your life. You have a lot that you've accomplished in your young life as a professional musician. You've been doing six figures and have been a valued member of our pro level community. So I know we're going to unpack a lot of value today. So let's all buckle up for those who are listening in. And yeah, let's get started. So first off, Logan, I was so surprised because you are like the golden testimonial for any course or anything. Like you're so studious, so structured, and then I find out that you have dropped out of college, and I thought that was so hilarious to how studious and structured you are. And I'm like, okay, but this is a good story here. Tell us about you and your dropping out of college story. What made you make the decision to go full time into music? What was that like for you? If you can take us back to that.
Yeah, so I'll go back to say it probably starts around when I was in high school.
Yeah.
So when I was in high school, there's a program called dual enrollment. So basically, during my senior year of high school, I was taking college classes and getting college credit in addition to high school, which is obviously like a great opportunity and opened up a lot of doors and whatnot. I feel like it might have worked against me in some ways, but like I kind of was thrust into that world without really thinking about like what to actually want to do with my life. So basically, when I graduated high school and already had some college credits, it was kind of the logical next step. Like I'm already going to school here, I can just keep going, get scholarships and that kind of thing. But I didn't really know what I wanted to do at all. So my first major was, I think it was like English or literature or something, because I was like, I like books. Let's just go with that. Did that for a semester or two, and was like, I don't really like want to do this for the rest of my life. Like I don't see this as going to open up career opportunities. Kind of just like going through the motions. So I switched to psychology after that. And same thing. I was like, I find this interesting, but I don't really see how this is leading to like a career path or something that's beneficial outside of just the getting the piece of paper essentially. So after that, I took a semester off, and then my mom started teaching at a different school in town, so I got free tuition there. And I was taking online classes, so I started doing business classes there, and I really enjoyed that. But I kind of had that third and final time where I was like, oh, I actually do enjoy these business classes, and I'm learning a lot. But I also, even though I enjoy the material, and it's benefiting me and what I'm seeing from the material, I don't really feel like it's going to actually be as efficient in terms of like actually just starting my own business. That might be a better way to go about it. So basically, I thought about it for a long time and weighed the pros and cons. And it definitely was a big gamble, but especially because a big thing working like the wind at my back at that point was like, well, this is like free tuition. Like how could I turn down this opportunity? But
Right.
the more I thought about it, I just kind of landed on the fact like, okay, just because it's a great opportunity doesn't mean that it's the right path. And yeah, basically at that point, I decided to drop out probably prematurely because I didn't really have much of a plan. My plan was just like, I'll figure it out. So there definitely, I wouldn't say it was like a clean story of like, oh, I just jumped off the ledge and followed my dreams and it all worked out. There were definitely many years where I struggled and made some mistakes and learned a lot and had to work some kind of dead end jobs and whatnot for a while. But eventually did work out. So that's kind of the story, is that I was struggling with like what path I wanted in life. And I definitely knew that I wanted to pursue music. I didn't really have a clear vision of what that looked like at first, but I definitely knew that college wasn't the path that was going to get me there or really just get me to whatever goals I had. It just didn't seem to align. This is also around the time that, online courses were becoming more popular. So I was saying, okay, there are other ways to learn. So I knew that it was going to take some self initiative to actually not just like hope things work out, but go and learn some new skills and whatnot. And yeah, didn't have a fully formulated plan, but decided to just take the jump and fumbled around for a little bit. But in the long term, it ended up working out.
Yeah. I love that. And again, I don't know why I was so surprised. And I love that story because I think of you, I've known you for a few years now, and you've always been such like a studious, determined guy who's just going out there and getting it. And so I'm like, you have a college dropout story. That's amazing. So you just saw the alternative route to education, decided, hey, that's more practical. So you're very pragmatic at the end of the day. You're doing what works. So I love that. When you dropped out, did you think that I'm going to make music work, or are you kind of like open to different things at that point? Or what, tell us about the aha moment where you're like, okay, yeah, like this thing I love, music, is actually going to be what works for me, and I'm going to go all in on it. Tell us about your thinking around how that took place.
Yeah, I knew I wanted to do music vaguely. At the time,
Right.
I played in like a lot of different bands, so I was like, I'm gonna go tour with my band, and we're gonna get famous. That's what's gonna happen. That did not work out at all. A lot of fun times. I definitely never made like hardly a penny from doing that.
Oh man.
Eventually, there was kind of a long path towards deciding to get into like the solo musician, like doing cover songs, bars and restaurants, such as that leading into like weddings and private events and that whole circuit. There were a couple key moments. So I definitely eventually kind of just got fed up with like, okay, like I want to take this seriously, but I'm in a band with other people that's not in like a derogatory way, but like for them, maybe just more of a hobby or they didn't have the same investment in it. So I did have
Right.
to make a decision at some point. I think one thing that was probably like the first step onto the right path to find success with it was deciding to really do it on my own or just make
Hmm.
something like the idea of the personal brand. And not that I don't like play with other musicians and bring in bands every once in a while, but I did have to kind of make a decision that the whole band thing wasn't going to work out the way I was hoping, and that I would kind of have to take control on my own and find a way to do it that way.
Yeah.
I'd say another kind of key moment that at the time definitely felt like a wall that I ran into, but looking back, I think actually taught me a lot and probably helped in the long run, even though it was tough to go through at the time. But without getting into the whole backstory, the gist of it is my uncle is in Atlanta, which had like a really booming film industry, still does, but at the time, this is like right at the start of things really ramping up in Atlanta. So he decided to open an acting studio, and this is kind of when I was in that point in my life where I was like, well, I'm not doing college. Like I wanted to do music, but I didn't have much direction. And my uncle's awesome. I love him. So he was like, come live with me and like help us open the studio. And I learned a lot from that. But point being, he got involved with a business partner who was a shady guy. And that's a whole story that I won't get into. But basically, this guy took all the money and like destroyed everything my uncle had built. The worst part is that they did have a successful acting studio, but I'm talking like liens on his house, taking every penny from his bank account, and just really just completely destroyed my uncle in a way that was really
Oh,
tough for me to see, and
yeah.
even being involved in it. So kind of a sad story, but I think looking back, it showed me the reality of what it's like to run a business and the risks that you run into. And
Hmm.
um, at the time, like my uncle was a great like motivator kind of guy, and like he had like a really positive outlook. But kind of the lesson that I took away from it is it's good to have a positive outlook, but also you have to keep your feet on the ground in some ways. So
Yeah.
basically, I bring all that up to say that it showed me that if I do want to make a creative pursuit something that's going to be a career in a business, that it has to come from a ground up perspective, and not that you can't be creative and enjoy that side of it too, but that it does have to come with some really really well thought out plans,
Mhm.
and moving in a very calculated manner so you don't get taken advantage of or just go the wrong direction because you're just too head in the clouds. So I think those two things, like deciding to go solo and then seeing how a business can go wrong, just gave me a good perspective on how to actually do things in a way that would be sustainable long term.
This makes so much sense because yeah, one of your superpowers, like, um, in the back end of like the running your music business is the fact that you are so systematic in how you think and very logical at looking at the numbers, always encouraging everyone else to like, oh, track your numbers. Like, here's my like masterful Notion templates. Take a look. And it's incredible that you are so detail oriented when it comes to looking at the the numbers and also zooming back and staying very grounded in the process. So yeah, that's a super important lesson that you took away from that experience. And the solo thing, I see that a lot as well too. And I had a similar tension when I started, but as a string quartet, you kind of have to work with people. So it's like, I know when we're not all moving together, it's like a three-legged race where it's like one person's just kind of dragging behind. So when you can do a solo thing, I usually recommend people like go for a solo thing, because working with people is actually the hardest part of business, and all businesses naturally evolve to that point. And you have like your assistants that you're working with now, your virtual assistants, and you have like this whole operation behind you. But it's hard at the beginning stage of a business to work with other people because you don't have the cash flow, and so
Mm.
that makes it hard to like build the incentives and make things work. And if you're starting out with a band without cash flow, it's can be not like it can't be done, but if you can start solo, it's a much simpler way to make sure that you have control over everything and can bring people on board when it's the right time. So that's some incredible lessons there. Thanks for sharing. And I'd love to condense even more of your journey, because you said that you've talked about how you have when you first wanted to do music, you were trying different things. It was a bit of a wondrous path, but you've recently fired up a YouTube channel. We're going to link it below, and you're consolidating the lessons that you've learned into really condensed action steps that are going to save a lot of musicians, especially those who are just getting started in their journey, a lot of heartache and help them see success a lot faster. So in your recent YouTube video, I absolutely loved it. You talked about basically how you became a six-figure musician and the 4 phases as you see them for becoming a professional musician. Do you mind walking us through them? I think you have networking, and residencies, private event systems. I don't want to give it all away, but walk us through that, okay? So we're in these wandering paths, and now we are pinpointing those exact phases and how they turned into what they did. So yeah, if you could unpack this for us, tell us about networking. Why was that an important phase 1 for you when you got started?
Yeah. So yeah, of course, this is my experience, and it's not that there's only one path to success. There's a lot of ways to find success with music or any pursuit, but this definitely was, looking back, connecting the dots. I kind of see this progression that I think can be replicated, and that is a pretty logical step-by-step way to go from having nothing built or not really knowing what you're doing to having a blueprint of what to do next. Yeah, basically, you kind of outline the 4 steps. But just for an overview, I kind of distilled it down to like networking, residencies, private events, and then systems. So I'd also say that these, even though I'm laying that out as 4 phases, there's a lot of interplay between them. So I don't think it's like you complete one and totally move on from it. It's more like you build on it and they all kind of work together by the end. But I think putting it in 4 phases gives an idea of where to start. And yeah, networking is foundational to business and just human relationships and life in general, which is just building relationships with people. So to give kind of 2 different perspectives on it, I'd say like in a more actionable way, like how do you, like everyone talks about networking, it's kind of can be a very vague term if you don't really define it. So I think for the average musician, if it's like, okay, well, how do I network, or like, where do I get started? Open mics are definitely the thing for me that filled that networking role, and did a lot of other things too. I think open mics are great for a lot of reasons. With networking, it's like you meet other musicians, some that are maybe at the same level as you, some that are below or farther along, but you get a really good mix of musicians at different phases and at different levels of their career. You also will meet, the venue managers or the people that are booking the talent at that venue. So you make some connections in the actual industry as well. Not even to say, you're obviously getting on stage, performing, honing your skills that way, but basically open mics were like the best way, where if you're just wondering, like, or even just kind of dipping your toes in the water and wondering what it might look like to make a career as a musician, it's a great way to get out there in a way that is very low pressure. Obviously, like, you might still have stage fright, but it's not like you're going to fumble this opportunity. Like, the whole context is like you're getting up there and just doing your thing, and even if you suck or you're still getting started, like it's not an environment where someone's going to look on any worse at you for it. It's a way to just kind of test the waters a little bit. To give another angle to networking, it's, every business is built on relationships to some degree. And I think it's really summed up by people say it's not what you know, it's who you know. I think that's like a half truth. Obviously it does matter what you know in terms of how you navigate the industry. But I think people kind of take that meaning in the opposite way of how it actually functions. And they take that as like a very dark, ominous thing where it's like, oh, if you're not born into a rich family, or you don't just happen to be in the right area and running in the right circles, then you don't have a chance of making it. Like, my experience was the total opposite. I took it more meaning like, if it's more who you know than what you know, then you have to go out and meet those people and put yourself in environments where you can form those relationships. So basically, people hear that saying, they take it as like a discouraging thing, but I think it should be really encouraging. Is not that you shouldn't learn things and build the skills to be successful, but without actually building relationships on top of that, that does limit your ability to actually make a career out of it. So yeah, again, I'd say open mics like the more practical approach, looking for something to get started, but just kind of more the concept behind it is who you know. And that doesn't mean that you need to know people right now. It just means that you need to, start actually going out there, putting yourself out there, and yeah, just trying to meet people in a way that that will serve you, and that you can build relationships that are going to help you get to the next level wherever you're at.
Yeah, 100%. This is a common thread throughout all musicians who are doing what they love, their stories. It's the relationships they built along the way were fundamental. And so I would love to hear about your first paid performance. How did that come out of those? Was it the open mic specifically that came out of? So maybe you didn't have that intention when you got started of exactly how it would work out, but tell us how that unfolded for you.
Yeah, so again, I played in a lot of bands growing up, so it wasn't like I hadn't performed before, or
Yeah,
might have got paid like $50 to play at like some random town in the middle of nowhere kind of thing. But
right.
when it came to actually building like a career out of it, it was directly from open mics. There was one particular that I attended just about every week, and I kind of befriended the band that hosted it, so I would help them set up and break down at the end of the night. And really, I mean, and this is another really important concept, is just to give without the expectation of getting something in return. So it wasn't like I was thinking this master plan, like, oh, I'll help them and say the right things and like they'll get an opportunity. It was more just like, okay, they're getting paid to do this. They're doing something in the music industry. Like I can probably learn a lot from them. They're cool guys. So I'm just gonna, try to offer my help whenever I can. And yeah, really just looking at it more like as a learning opportunity and just immerse myself in that environment. But it did eventually lead to, basically what happened is they had a gig somewhere else in town. And they said, hey, like come by, it's a 3 hour gig they had, and they had, a couple breaks in their sets. They said, when we're on our break, you can come up and play a few songs. And I did that one or two times, and then basically got an offer from that venue to come play. And yeah, that's kind of what I look at as being like that first stepping stone, was going from the open mic environment to actually playing with another band more as like almost like they were kind of showcasing me in some ways, and that did eventually lead to some direct paid opportunities from those venues.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is often underlooked, I feel, networking with musicians themselves, because, of course, we have event planners who are great to know and also venues that are great to know. But often the first step comes as I call this position kind of being a freelancer when we're working with other groups primarily. And, that's a great way to be able to latch onto something that's already working and see how they do their thing and get those doors open for you as well when it comes to the relationships they've already built. So yeah, networking with musicians is a great way to start, to bring us to the next phase that we're about to get into, which is getting those residencies and getting connected with venues. So tell us about your phase two then, because you already said that this was the opportunity that led for you, getting your own paid performances at venues. So what did that look like when it came to getting to phase two, as you described as residencies? So what does that term mean? How can someone get there, do you think?
Yeah, so the reason that really stuck out to me as like a distinct phase was, again, kind of drawing on my experience playing a lot of bands growing up. I always thought that like every opportunity is like you're gonna rent out a venue, or a promoter's gonna hire you, and then you sell tickets, and like you have to make this event out of it, which very much is definitely like a very viable path, and I think applies a lot more if you're trying to come at it more from like making original music and being an artist and showcasing yourself that way. But basically the idea of residencies just showed me that, oh, like there's this whole other world of events where it's a lot of times like bars, restaurants, hotels, these kind of establishments that you don't need to sell tickets to get paid, and that they are basically just looking to bring entertainers for their guests.
Mm.
And yeah, that was like an aha moment for me, in the sense that I was like, oh, like I don't need to necessarily build this large fan base and work towards like selling out this one event to make enough money to cover like a week of expenses. Like I can find these opportunities that are already there that will pay you just for your talent, that you don't need to bring a crowd per se. And yeah, then when I say residencies, I kind of come at it from the perspective of looking at it as an ongoing thing. So instead of booking a gig and then, okay, now I have to book the next gig and go to another city or go somewhere else, more building like consistent relationship with, starting with at least one venue, but really in the long term to go full time, having, basically like an array of different venues that you can go back to weekly or monthly, or, every venue has their own kind of cadence to it. But yeah, basically going into that first gig and realizing like, oh, they have bands every Friday, Saturday, or every day of the week, whatever it is for that particular venue. And realizing that if you are good at what you do, and again, you focus on that networking, you're a pleasant person to be around, you're professional and that kind of thing, that you can turn that into a relationship where you come back consistently. And yeah, again, depending on how frequently this happens, if you can get 10 to 20 gigs per month that are happening on a consistent basis, that alone will get you to that kind of full-time income, that you can then grow from there. But basically it's really just signified a shift from always like kind of looking for the next thing and saying, okay, even if this one gig went great, it's like you have to start from scratch for the next one, and kind of shifting that mindset to saying like, no, once you get a gig somewhere in this type of market, you can build on that and not need to start from scratch every week or every month, but actually have like a really solid book of business that you can go back to and sustain yourself without needing to constantly be finding new opportunities.
Mhm. And that consistency and reliability is so huge, especially when you're getting started. So when you know you have something on the calendar that's going to be reoccurring every other Friday or whatever it is at the specific venue that you can just, you know, always be able to plug into is, I think, really something that is overlooked often with musicians who are looking to get started and build up that consistency so they can pour more time into their craft and get to that full-time level, because you absolutely can with the residencies alone. So yeah, no, that's a very eye-opening to learn about. Of course, like for me, when in my experience going full-time into music, these residencies, I did not have as much opportunity for as like a bigger thing, like with a band string quartet. But again, for like solo acts, this is great. I think that like probably if I would have budgeted really, given really low numbers to get in some residencies, it might have happened more. And hey, if you're getting started, that's great experience too. But especially if you're solo, like, because they pay like what, like, $100 to $300 if you're a solo act, like doing that for an evening, like once a week, every consistently, that's not a bad gig to get started if it's just between one person. So I think that's a great way to start.
Yeah, that's yeah, and I mean, we can kind of get into the next phase, and why I draw a distinction with that is because the upside is obviously consistency and lots of opportunities, but the downside is there's somewhat of a limit on the pay scale.
Mm-hmm.
And basically the reason being is that when a bar, a restaurant, hotel, that type of venue is paying you to come perform, and it's not in the context like selling tickets where you're really drawing based on your name. Really what they're doing is they're basically investing in an experience that will help them make more money, whether it's people that are already there staying for another drink and staying a little bit longer and spending a little more money, or bring in a crowd that wouldn't have otherwise come in without the entertainment. But basically the bottom line is you are an investment for the business, and they're hoping to make a return on that. So
Mm-hmm.
you can be the most talented person in the world, but at a certain point, they have margins to worry about, and they just genuinely can't afford to pay you after a certain point. And if you want to make more money per gig, you do kind of have to eventually either transition out of that, or again, there's a lot of schools of thought here. I think it definitely is good to have a primary focus. I do still do these gigs occasionally because it's a great kind of public showcase. So even though kind of the next thing we can talk about is private events and why that opens up a new level of income. But I think there still is a place, and I still enjoy doing those gigs in the sense that people can come see me in public when you do private events, and especially like a lot of the wedding couples I work with. They like knowing they can come see me play at the bar downtown, or just come see me for a public gig. So even though it maybe isn't the most maximizing income in that way, it's a way to still be out in public. And I even get more gigs based on being in public, where someone sees me and I give a business card, they might book me for something else. So basically, I don't rely on them anymore, and they're not my primary income. But I do still see them as having some small role in just being plugged into that public performance world, and they're just fun sometimes. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
get some free beer and free food and whatnot. Like, it's not always about the money. Sometimes it's just a little more relaxed environment, and that can be a good way to break up the maybe higher stress of some of the corporate events and weddings and that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm all for it. I think it's, the biggest agency that I've discovered in the world uses this as their main funnel to book their high ticket events. And that's like going to these showcases, they label them as, and they publicly advertise them so people can come, try before you buy, like hear them live. And then you can go ahead and reserve them for your own private concert, performance, whatever. And so I think it's a great thing if someone is interested in doing it for, like where else can you get paid advertisement is another way to think of it. Like paid
Yeah,
advertisement as
exactly.
in they're paying you, you know what I mean? If you think of it that way, like we pay to advertise in all these sorts of ways. But yeah, a way to actually have events to connect with your people and stay in each other's worlds even after they hire you, I think is a great thing to have that as a heartbeat to keep going even a little bit, even if you pare it back. So yeah, I love that. But that does bring us into, like you said, there's some limitations in terms of what the businesses can afford to pay you because of, their bottom line. But then private events, you mentioned, opens up a different opportunity in that way. So talk to us about your transition to private events and what that looked like for you, how you got started in that.
Yeah. So, I mean, the big reason behind why you might choose to go into private events is there's a few reasons, but I'd say obviously the big one is just making more money. And, the big distinction is they're not always necessarily a business paying you for a return. Not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily like there's corporate events, and that is technically a business paying you, but basically they're not paying you with the hopes that you're going to bring in more money somehow. They're really just looking to get the best experience possible. So it is a realm where you can get paid more based on Your talent, of course, it really does come down a lot of times more to like marketing and branding and that kind of thing. But basically, the reason I like to draw that distinction is like I know plenty of really talented musicians, and if they're kind of in that bar circuit, they don't get paid any more or less than anyone else. They're kind of in that same, they're stuck in that same rut pay scale, which again, maybe enough to make a living off of, and that's great. But if you want to go above that, the private events open up a different market where you're getting paid based on the value that you can convey to them, and they're not going to be as sensitive to making that money back, especially something like a wedding where it's like a once in a lifetime event. Like they're going to pay whatever they have to get the experience they want.
Right.
Um, and yeah, I mean, kind of how I got into that. So earlier on, there were a few kind of just word of mouth things where I think my very first private party I ever did was like my best friend's neighbor growing up that like it was like her birthday party or something. So that was way before I really knew anything about the private event space and how to charge more. And like I think I charged them like the same I would charge a bar or something. That was pretty earlier on, but basically as I kind of progressed past that and got a little more savvy with online marketing and having a good website and that kind of thing. Um, there's a couple of different ways to get those types of gigs. I think earlier on, and what came most consistently was using affiliate listing sites. So things like Thumbtack, Gig Salad, Wedding Wire, which, if you're not familiar, are basically websites that they do the work of getting SEO. So getting ranked on Google, for example, or someone is to search on Google to hire a musician. These websites have spent the money and done the optimization where they're pretty much always going to be the top results. And you definitely can get your website to rank better. But when you're talking about companies with multi-million-dollar budgets, like in some ways, like it's not that you can't compete, more so much as like, okay, if they're already doing that and getting ranked,
Right.
you can basically plug into their ecosystem and create profiles on these websites. And that was really what I focused on earlier on was I have my own website, but really instead of focusing on getting my website ranked on Google, I'm more focused on creating profiles on these websites and getting ranked on their algorithms higher, which really comes down to getting reviews on these platforms. Like I think that if someone wants to get into this market, like the two most important things is have good video content that showcases what you do. And when I say good video content, it doesn't need to be even like professionally produced. That obviously can help, but basically content that shows, okay, like if I hire this person, like what's it going to sound like? What do they look like when they perform? Just having a showcase of what you do. Then on top of that, having reviews for two reasons. Number one is obviously it's just social proof showing that you've done this before, that people have been happy with hiring you. And with these websites more specifically, their algorithms do rank you higher based on how many reviews you have. So basically, when I figured that out, and I showed that, okay, if I can get some good videos and then get a bunch of reviews and rank higher on these platforms, people will find me when they aren't just looking for me specifically, but if they're looking for a service that I provide, if it's for wedding music or for a private party, whatever it is, that they can find these websites, then find me through there. I would say also one of the, just to give, kind of devil's advocate, the downside to these platforms is it is kind of casting a wide net. So not every person is going to be necessarily the best fit for you. Sometimes they might just be price shopping and trying to find the cheapest option. I do kind of look at it as like a numbers game where like not every lead you get from these websites is going to be a great lead and they're not all going to work out. But if you have enough volume and you're getting enough people reaching out, like there definitely is a percentage of them that will genuinely value your services and willing to pay you more for it. Uh, yeah, then kind of looking outside of that, I think the most valuable long term that definitely does take some time to build up, but this network of referrals and kind of word of mouth marketing in a slightly more practical way, like especially in like the wedding and event space with the venues as well as the event planners, building relationships with them. Just kind of looking at it as something more downstream, where if someone's getting married and they've already booked their venue and that's already set in stone, it's pretty natural that if that venue then suggests you for their music, that's just a much more highly qualified lead compared to someone just finding you online. And I still definitely get a lot of leads from both types of traffic coming into my business. But I would say definitely more often than not, the ones that come from referral, whether it's from a venue or event planner, or even just if I do someone's wedding and then friend of a friend recommends me, that kind of thing, that does carry a lot more weight. And it's just less work to sell yourself in some ways because they're not necessarily comparing you to other options. They are kind of set on you from the get-go most of the time. And that gives you more leverage with charging what you're worth and just not necessarily having to convince them that you're trustworthy, basically. Yeah, basically I got started with the online affiliate listing sites. I still use those a lot, but definitely the most valuable and reliable long term are just building a network of referrals from venues, planners, and just past clients that recommend you to people that they know.
Mhm. And snowballs from there. That's awesome. Again, you're condensing so much of, hard won lessons that took you years to happen upon. And so this is for anyone who's getting started, this is the most condensed way. Just follow this path. And I think it will be applicable to so many musicians, these principles. So tell us about the other thing I didn't know I was going to go here, but another cool thing about what you added on to what you do is DJing. So tell us about that unlock for you. What prompted you to do that? And what has life been like since you added DJing to the offer stack for yourself?
Yeah, I love the story because it just really gives some context for like how we kind of self-impose restrictions that aren't really there. Um,
Mm,
basically, there was a venue that I played a wedding for, and they hired me. Basically, I had talked to this venue and talked about pitching me for live music. So if they wanted someone to play guitar and sing during their cocktail hour, ceremony, that kind of thing. But someone hired me for that, and they said, "Oh, like, can we pay you a little extra to like do a Spotify playlist during the reception?" And like, they weren't really even like expecting me to be like a full-on DJ. They're just like, "Oh, like we like the live music, and like we don't necessarily care that much about having a separate DJ. Like, can you just do some basic Spotify, whatever?"
mhm,
So I didn't think much about it. I was like, "Yeah, I think I charged like $1,000 for that."
mhm.
And then a couple days later, after the wedding, and of course, like again, as musicians, we're always very maybe self-critical. Or I was like, the whole time, like, did I do a good job? Like, I don't know if I really like if I was the right fit or blah blah. But the venue called me a few days later, and he was like, "Oh, like they raved about you. They said you were so awesome, and like we didn't know you DJ'd. Like, if we knew that, we could like put together a package and like sell a ton of these packages. Like, that's something that would really generate a lot of demand."
Mhm.
Um, and just to kind of like again, this is an imposter syndrome thing where I luckily had like built some level of kind of taking opportunities to come and not really questioning it. So I was like, "Yeah, I DJ," and like kind of just like I didn't tell them like, "Oh no," it's kind of just like I just put on a playlist, but I was like, "Yeah, I'm a DJ." Um, and I mean, literally, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this, but just to give you an idea for like what the difference between how we as musicians perceive the value of something like that versus like just the general public. I got by for like close to a year by just basically using Spotify. Like I had like a small basic DJ controller, but I wasn't doing any crazy mixing or anything like that. And again, like I know some people will take that as like maybe cheapening the idea of a DJ. I think there's maybe some merit to that, but basically what that taught me was like, okay, this is really more about curation than anything else.
Yeah.
And I've been a musician for a long time, and the technicalities of DJing, like I can figure that out. Like really what's valuable is knowing how to pick the right songs at the right moment.
Yeah.
So nowadays I have really turned it into a formal offering where like I do the mixing and the transitions, like I become more of a legit DJ. But the reason I say all that is like you don't need to be this like when you're starting out, at least like you don't need to have it all figured out. Like if you have a
Mhm.
certain base level, you can just get started. And not say you should like deceive people, but basically what I'm
Mhm.
saying is when someone hires a DJ or hires a musician, they don't really quantify the value of that in the same way that you would as a musician. Maybe
Mhm.
another better example is like I play guitar and sing, and growing up I loved like Van Halen and like lots of shredding, lead guitar, that kind of thing. um and learned pretty early on, like, okay, if I am playing to a crowd that wants to hear songs they know, like, I can throw in some cool solos here and there. But like, if I'm just shredding the whole time, even though you might think like, oh, that shows a lot of talents, people are going to enjoy that more. That's not the case at all. Like, again,
Mm.
maybe little bits here and there are good to add some flavor, but really, people just want to hear songs that they can sing along to, that they recognize, and just have a good time more so than they're going to like analyze your technical ability. So
Mhm.
again, not so that you shouldn't be good at what you do and build your talent, but really the things that people find valuable are much more emotionally based, more than like
Mm.
judging the technicality of what you're doing. So that just taught me a lot in terms of like how to present myself. And as a musician, I want to get better every day and improve my skills. But when it comes to like your marketing and how you get better paying gigs, I think the big breakthrough for me was realizing like, okay, you don't get paid more and you don't get more work by being better necessarily. I think there's like a floor, like you have to be a certain amount of good. And past
Mhm.
that point, like you might get some incremental improvement in terms of your bookings from how talented you are. But really between someone that's really good and someone that's amazing, the guy that's just really good, that is better at marketing and that has better content, they're going to get paid more and get more work than the guy that's just really good that doesn't know how to present themselves, right? So that was
Yeah.
kind of the big takeaway for me.
Yeah, it's so true because we have so much wiring as musicians of what is hard to play, what is like talent. And I know you can appreciate like a guitarist and a singer in a way that I couldn't, because of the nuance and your experience with those crafts. And the same way, like for me, like someone playing violin, you can recognize so much nuance, but for most people who don't know anything about it, it's just like wow. And like some things that seem easy to us can still have that wow effect. So it's different. Sometimes it can be easy things that come together that make that component. Like you said, it's often the emotionally driven things. And even taking that DJ lesson, like playing the right song at the right moment is so powerful to create an experience, which is really what people are buying. So it's about using the talent we have and curating it. And often when we can play at this level, like when we're really pushing ourselves, coming down to this level to make it easy for ourselves gives us more mental capacity to take in all those other things that are going around us, or the other sensory inputs, so we can really be on top of what's going on. Because I had a mindset for a while when I was, whenever you're performing and you're doing like whatever award show or whatever you're trying to do, when you're learning music as a kid, you're always like pushing yourself to be like, learning a really hard song and then you're performing that really hard song. At least that's how I did it. But it's not like that when it comes to, or I wouldn't recommend that method when it comes to the performing professionally. It's like you want to be like playing the songs that are easy for you now that you know in the back of your hand, and not be. I used to think that I had to always like push myself, like play the hardest thing possible, and that would be what was good. But that's not how people perceive value at all. What is challenging. So yeah, that's super eye opening. Then that brings us to our phase 4 here now. And this one, I would say, again, this is your secret sauce in terms of the superpower you have, that a lot of us musicians struggle with this part of the brain. But you can sell us, I know you're going to be able to sell us on some benefits of developing the side of what it means to be a professional musician, and that is systems. So now you have this operation where, you have virtual assistants that you hire, and I know you have everything tracked and dialed in, really fine-tuned, which is incredible, but didn't start there. So talk to us about what systems mean to you, why they're important, and maybe what are some of the most important things to focus on for someone just getting started thinking about systems.
Yeah, I kind of lay this out as phase 4, and I think it's a little different in the sense that it's not doing a different type of event or really even approaching things differently at all. It's more about like, okay, what am I already doing, and how can I track it to measure it and improve it?
Mm-hmm.
A quote that I really like is, "What gets measured gets improved."
Right.
Or it's like, "What gets measured gets managed." Basically, the idea is like you can do the same things, but just the act of tracking it
Mm-hmm.
does something, whether it's something mentally or just with directing your focus, uh, that just brings more attention to where things could be better.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'd say like the 3 most important numbers in this type of business, and in most businesses, but kind of to cater it to like a performance music business. It's basically like, how many new leads are you getting on like a monthly basis? Your conversion rate, which is, if you bring in 50 new leads and you convert 20 of them, that's what, like I'm doing math, 40% conversion rate. So, out of the number of leads coming into your business, how many you're actually turning into bookings? And the third thing would be like your average value per booking, or on an average basis, what are you getting paid for these performances? And I do think it's important to look at it as an average, because especially with something like I do, where some gigs I'm showing up for an hour, I'm playing guitar. Sometimes I'm doing a full wedding where I'm DJing and guitar and like having 3 different sound systems set up. So um, basically looking at any one gig, I see some variation in terms of price. And I think it's important because if you book one really high paying gig and you can feel good about that, but then if the rest of them are all like, lower paying bar gigs, it's really that average that you want to dial in so that you can
Mm-hmm.
understand like, okay, I might do different types of events, but really, if that average is lower than I want it to be, it might mean that I need to focus more on a certain type of event, or even just seeing like, okay, doing this type of offer is a lot more profitable than something else. Maybe I should just cut out the other thing and focus on this one, right? So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, new leads, how many people are inquiring to book you, how many of them actually do end up booking you, and then what's the average value per performance that you're doing. I think those 3 numbers are the most important to track. That will give you a pretty clear idea of what you can improve or where you can go next.
Yeah. And that average value per booking, I had never thought of that myself to take a look at that, but I've since come to appreciate that more. And again, it comes with like keeping us level, you know what I mean? Because we don't want to be like, this one doesn't pay much. And we were kind of like feeling down as we go out. And, on the other side, we don't want to get too excited when something's like a big payday. Keeping level there's so many turbulent things that we can get emotional about. For someone like me, it's good to have like things that keep you level. So yeah, looking at the averages, I think that's a great one that you made clear to me, or that you showed me you were doing that, and it's been useful for me as well since. And the other one that you didn't mention, and so I would also categorize those as the 3 three more important, but the other one that I like that you do is, tell me if I'm making this up. Do you like average the value per lead or like call or something like that? I thought that you had a way of seeing like, oh yeah, like most calls, this call it like, I don't know. Talk to us about that one because it gave a way to look at like, okay, when I do a call, it's like going to work out to be this much money, other than like, you're doing a sales call and you completely don't get the sale. It feels like you made nothing. So tell us about
Yeah.
that one. I think that one was super unique.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, yeah, it's like I'd look at it as like value per booking versus value per lead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd say like if you had to pick one, I think value per booking is probably the most important because
Right.
that's the one that you have the most direct control over, like charging more or adjusting your pricing. But yeah, I think that the value per lead just
That's
helps
what it
to
was.
see. I think more than anything, it just helps you to understand like, are your marketing efforts working? Are they profitable?
Mm.
Um, so let's take an example and um, say if you're getting 50 leads per month and you're spending $1,000 on marketing, and then you're making $10,000 in revenue, for example, then you can see, okay, like each lead is worth so much. And even if I don't close, 6 out of 10 or 7 out of 10, or if I have whatever you're actually closing, you can see that if I'm spending this amount in marketing and getting this much out in revenue, like regardless of if any specific person books or not, like this is on average what that will make me if I keep these same numbers.
Mm-hmm.
That way, when you do have a rep where maybe you don't book a few in a row, and that can be discouraging, you can say, okay, well, I'm eventually going to book one that's going to make up for it. And it just helps you look at things on a little more even playing field, compared to like every single new lead being like a make or break kind of mindset.
Yeah, yeah, I like that one too. So it was value per lead, value per booking. Okay. No, that's a great thing to think about. Now, how you track all of this, you did a phenomenal masterclass inside of Musicwork Pro that was all about your specific systems when it comes to Notion. And yeah, it was very interesting to see the behind the curtain of how you do what you do. Um, we can take a second if you need it. It's all good. But
As long as
when
I'm
it
sure.
comes, yeah. But tell us about yeah, that masterclass. Well, I guess I can say about that masterclass too, because it was just like you showed us exactly how you use these Notion templates to track all these things, and also shared some principles about how you think about systems. So that was a very insightful masterclass that you showed us inside of Musicwork Pro. But yeah, thanks for putting that together again. But yeah, like what? Tell us about maybe why you decided to use Notion. Why does that one make sense for you?
Yeah, do you want me to share my screen?
Yeah, let's go for it. I actually don't know if I need to give permissions or not. So just let me
I
know if
see
it
an
works for you.
option.
If you
Let me try it out
if you
here.
see the share screen button and it works,
Mhm.
let's do it.
Can you see that?
I can see it. Looks
Okay, cool.
looks
Yeah, so basically I like Notion. Probably there's Notion's a very involved piece of software. There's a bit of a learning curve. I
hmm
think the reason I like it specifically for this purpose, a lot of little things. I think the big one that I like the most that I don't really see that you're able to do in other softwares is basically having like one database that you can view in different ways. And like the most practical way of looking at that is like right now I'm looking at a list of leads, but I can also switch that to like event dates, for example, and see, okay, like what leads or what dates am I getting inquiries for? So that's why I like Notion specifically is just the ability to take one database and not need to have like a separate calendar versus like a Google Sheet, for example, but have just one database that I can seamlessly look at different views and see the same data in different formats. That's what I like about Notion specifically.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, this is basically where I track everything. So, I every time a lead comes in fact, I just got one that I haven't even finished filling in because I came in like right before our call started. Let me show one that's gonna be a little more filled in. So, basically I like put their name, like what's their event date, what type of event is it. This one here, status, is kind of like where are they in the sales process. So basically the first thing I would do is a consultation, which is like a phone call or just talking to them. Then it's like waiting to see if they'll actually book. And then I send the contract, deposit, like I have just different phases here. That way I can see, any given time, like where is this person in the process? Should I follow up with them? That kind of thing. Lead source. So where did this lead come from? Their contact info and that kind of thing. Um, and basically looking at it in this database, I also put like so I have lead value, which is sometimes an estimate of basically like if they were going to book me, like what's that price going to be for that gig. And then I've set it up with an automation where once I mark it as confirmed, then it'll add a new column here where I can see, okay, like what's the total value of the new business I brought in this month? And then I also have conversion rate where I can see out of like the new leads that came in, how many actually booked. So I can kind of see that right here at a glance. Yeah, and I also have another parameter here where, especially now that I'm getting busier, sometimes someone will reach out for a date that I'm not available. So if I take these out, I've actually gotten looks like 50 leads this month. It's funny, I was in that example kind of randomly, but actually is the number. But when I filter that based on, okay, like some of these I wasn't available for, or if it was like an opportunity that I thought like I wasn't a good fit for, I might turn it down. So I filter out that. I have about 33 leads that are kind of qualified that I'd be available for. And I think it's a better qualification where like if I didn't filter those out, it would probably make my conversion rate look artificially low. But it's like, if I'm not available, I can't do the gig. That's not like a lost opportunity. It's just something that wasn't really going to be a possibility to begin with. So, but I do track it. I think it's important I still put them in the system. That does help me see like, maybe, I've talked in the past about maybe like bringing in other musicians and hiring out contractors for those dates that I'm not available. I kind of decided against that because it seemed to be more effort than was worth it. But it's still just good to see like, okay, like how many, maybe I can notice like, oh, during these busier seasons, like here are the dates that I have really high demand for that fill up really early. Maybe those are the type of dates that I could test out like a higher price, for example. Yeah, that's basically the gist of it. I track as much data as I can, really. I try to, set like reminders to follow up for a certain number of days. And one thing I would say too about why I think it's really important to track things as much as you can is it does help you to see the bigger picture. So in fact, let me go and see if I look at like December, for example. December was like looking back, like a terrible month actually, where I didn't, close a lot of leads. In reality, the reason this looks so low is I got a lot of new leads in December that didn't book until January.
Yeah, that's
So
a typical pattern. Like
yeah,
December's low, January goes back up. Yeah.
yeah. So basically, by tracking this, I can see, especially now that I've been doing this for a few years, like I knew to expect that. So like
Yeah.
in a vacuum, I might see like, oh my gosh, like things are going downhill this month. But I kind of knew like, okay, it's December. Probably, you can see the trend here. I get like a ton of inquiries and they kind of drop off. But then a lot of them will come back and book later on. So I could expect it, which just helps you to plan things better and just like your mental state, like understanding that it's not like things are crumbling around you. It's more just like a time trend that things will pick back up again soon.
Work
Yeah.
of art. It's like I just love looking at it. As someone who uses Google Sheets, I mean, I would make the switch just because of how pretty this is and how intuitive it looks. But that would be a lot of legwork. But yeah, for anyone who's considering getting started with something, Logan's Notion templates are where it's at for sure. Brings such clarity to look at something like this. So yeah, you did a fabulous masterclass on this again. So if anyone wants to get on that, let us know in the comments if you're in the Musicwork community. Maybe we'll make it available in the free community as well for you guys. But yeah, thanks for showing that beautiful breakdown. I love how it connects with the calendar. Everything is just so easy to understand. But yeah, so there we are. Like the 4 phases, everyone. That's how you become a professional musician like Logan. And you've accomplished this in a short amount of time, but I know you sharing these lessons with others is going to help anyone else out there who's eager be able to accomplish it in even less time. So that's incredible. Thanks for sharing your experience. You've been a super valued member of our Musicwork Pro community, and we've had a great time masterminding with some of the other members who are at similar levels to you and bouncing ideas off of each other and such. I'm curious from your perspective, what has it been like to be in that environment with other people, musicians who are on a similar journey as you? And yeah, what has your experience been like there?
Yeah, I just love being in a community of people that are, at around the same level, some maybe even further along that can learn from. But I think a big positive for me is it's like having an environment with other people that are doing similar things, because
Yeah.
being especially as a solo musician compared to a band, like you're doing most things on your own. Even if you bring in a team or like bring in other musicians, you're still like running things on your own. So it kind of like fills that need of like just the social aspect of, when you have a job, you have coworkers and you have a social aspect to it. It's like Musicwork Pro helps to like have that community in a way that's like, because even if you do have a team, like it's still in the context of like it's a business relationship. So it's maybe not as maybe more frowned upon to like have certain types of conversations. Like in Musicwork Pro, I can talk about things like pricing and lead flow and things like maybe you wouldn't necessarily discuss with like your team in the same way.
Right.
But people that are running their own businesses that can give you ideas, give you feedback. um, yeah, even more than anything, just like a community in general. Like there's a lot of tangible benefits in growing the business, but I find just like having a community to bounce ideas off of and hear people going through similar wins or even similar struggles is helping you feel, yeah, it's a little less alone, having more of a social group that you can be part of.
For sure. It is a solopreneur life often, being in the music business. So it's nice to have people who are in the same position, but not connected in the way that, people that you're making decisions for often, like if they're working for you, is, creates a different dynamic that makes decision making and knowing how to handle things a lot more balanced. And yeah, it just makes you feel a little bit more a part of something. So yeah, again, you're a super valued member of everything that you're bringing to what we're doing there. And I know you've shared a lot. I'm curious if there's been any aha moments learning from some of the other guys in there or some of the other members that kind of changed the way that you have done things in your business or in your music or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of like little gems that get dropped every once in a while. Like a couple that come to mind. One that I did implement this last year was, I think it was Grant that talked about like how he would send out holiday cards
Right.
to past clients. That was like just one random little thing that, yeah, like it's a little early to say like will that lead to more direct business. I'm sure eventually, like just the keeping you top of mind, that kind of thing. But um, that was a great idea. That, like if nothing else, just helps you to build more goodwill and just a nice thing to do. And if it leads to more business, great. But it's also just a way to stay connected with people and even in a business context, just be more human and form relationships outside of like exchanging money, but like just wishing them Merry Christmas and happy birthday, that kind of thing. Like I wouldn't probably have thought to do otherwise.
Mm.
Another one that I haven't done, but like it just sticks out because it was like, oh my gosh, that's such a cool idea. Like I can't believe you did that. It was Mike Medved. I think he had like a QR code or something. Like he created like this website page where there was a song that he did, and they could go to this website that he created and like click a button that would play like a certain tone, a certain key. And there's like
Hmm.
different options. So it was kind of like a harmony thing where like you would play the song and they could go to this website
Be a
and
part
like
of it.
play along with it in some ways. So I haven't done that. Like I might try that eventually, but I just thought that was so cool. And like ideas like that are like totally off the wall. Like I don't see how anyone even comes up with that, but that's just another example of like, oh my gosh, like that's a great idea that I never would have possibly thought of on my own.
Yes. I love that, and I would love to be at a concert with either of you and be able to participate playing my iPhone instrument,
Yeah.
with those tones. I also thought that was such a clever, brilliant idea. Shout out to Mike My Bed. But yeah, and the Christmas cards, I didn't know you did that one. But yeah, little things like that can, be so fun and add so much, to the experience for clients. And it's, we're selling experience at the end of the day, so, and relationships. So anything to build that, I think, is super valuable. So, okay. This has been super fun. One fun question to wrap us up here, because how you got into music. I wonder if there's anyone in the house who's in the comment section here who can join. How you got into music. I wonder if anyone else can relate. So tell us sort of how you got into music. I already know it, but I think for us millennials, this one might be more common than there
Yeah.
might be someone else out there like you.
Oh, no, I think there's a whole generation for sure, but it was basically, it was Guitar Hero. It was like,
Yes.
um, I think like my friend had it or something, but like I just remember like playing. I was pretty good at it. So it's like, oh, like I'm playing along with these songs. Like maybe I can do this in real life. And even just like the classic rock genre, like it just turned me on to like this, older music like you probably wouldn't have been exposed to otherwise. But like, it's what you're depending on your generation. Like for me, it's like my grandparents grew up on that might have otherwise been like uncool, but Guitar Hero made it cool
Yeah.
and just showed me like, hey, this is like, something that starting out, of course, is like a hobby and a passion that eventually did lead to a career, but um, it just showed me music that I wouldn't have heard otherwise. And playing the buttons or whatever on Guitar Hero just like kind of just gave me that confidence of like, I bet I could probably figure out how to do this like on the real thing, that otherwise
Mhm.
I might have just never even thought about it.
Yeah, that's so funny. So, any other millennials or anyone for that matter in the comment section, whether you're on YouTube or wherever you're watching this in the music work community, let us know how, if you learn guitar the same way. Uh, give us a thumbs up, because I thought that's probably a common story, but I love that it was yours because Guitar Hero just kind of swept through our generation. So, what was it like actually learning guitar after Guitar Hero? Was it a little disappointing? You're like, oh, this is a little different, or was it
It
like,
was
okay, I
hard.
kind
Yeah,
of
there was
it's
definitely a learning curve. I think like little. I mean, I have like huge hands and long fingers. I think
There you
I
go.
had
That
that
helps.
working for me, so that really helped
Yeah.
to like get through the initial phases. But no, it wasn't like, oh, I did Guitar Hero, so I can just pick up a guitar and shred. It was like,
You had
oh,
a
it's kind of
realistic
hard.
outlook.
um, but yeah, that also just like a generational thing. That's I realized pretty early on that I can go to YouTube and like find guitar lessons that way. So I ended
Yeah.
up taking lessons in person for a while later on, but that first probably year or two at least was literally just like, oh, I like this song. Let's go on YouTube and find the lesson.
Oh,
And
no way.
that was basically how I got started, was just learning random songs, and then
Yeah.
eventually got more into like music theory and whatnot. But it was basically
Yeah.
just Guitar Hero and then YouTube to get started.
Yeah, self-taught. Another fun fact, I didn't even know that. I love it. That's awesome. Yeah, like for me, I was like, I had the completely wrong expectations when I picked up my violin for the first time. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna sound so great, and I sounded so horrible. I started crying. I'm like, what is this? Why am I so bad at it? So yeah, that's real life hitting you in the face sometimes. But yeah, okay. Logan, this has been very, very wonderful. Thank you so much for jumping on here to have this conversation. Looking forward to continue to see you rocking and growing with your music life and business. So yeah, thanks again for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Oh, and I'll have links to where people can find you in the comments, but maybe shout them out real quickly here. How can people find you? It's real simple. Is it just Logan Thomas Music everywhere, or where are
Yeah,
the main places that you hang out?
LoganThomasMusic.com or Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, pretty much all the major platforms, just at Logan Thomas Music.
Okay, I love it. Let's give a final smile for the thumbnail, and then we'll call it a day there. All right, thanks so much, Logan. See you around.
Thanks, Allison. See ya.